Gurumin is an odd game. It feels like a game for younger players with its tone, content, and presentation. And then you come to the gameplay and you're like, I, as a nearly 30-year-old adult, am struggling to handle parts of this. And what do you mean there are numerous harder difficulties than this? I feel comfortable calling Gurumin the most out-of-place Falcom game I've ever played. Does that mean it's not worth playing? Far from it. Gurumin has plenty of depth and fun gameplay in its well-developed gameplay loop, and while it embraces a lot of Falcom's tendencies you may have seen in games like the East series or Zwei, there are some twists that distinguish this game from other Falcom releases. This is not a narratively deep game, but there is plenty of charm and fun gameplay to keep them hooked. Gurumin, A Monstrous Adventure is an action RPG with 3D platforming elements developed by Nihon Falcom and published in North America by Mastiff and Europe by 505 Game Street. The game was originally developed for PC and released in Japan in 2004. The game was later ported to the PSP in 2006 and the 3DS in 2016. The Western releases were very oddly spaced out though. The PSP port came first with the 2007 release in North America and Europe. Afterwards, the PC original was brought to Steam in 2015, over a decade after the original release. And then in 2016, the North American and European version of the 3DS release actually came out a month before the Japanese version. And the Japanese version wasn't even published by Nihon Falcom, but instead by a company called Fly High Works. Gurumin does have an interesting place in Falcom's development history because it came out right after Ys 6, The Ark of Nepishnum, and Trails in the Sky First Chapter, and just before Ys the Oath and Felghana and Xanadu Next. This was a stage in Falcom's history with a concerted effort to figure out the next steps of the company between starting the new Legend of Heroes sub-series Trails and reviving the Ys and Xanadu series. Gurumin fits in that time to me as an additional experiment among these other releases. Let's see if we jump into the 3D style game and incorporate some platforming elements if that might be what people want from us moving forward. The result? People thought it was alright, but not nearly as compelling as the aforementioned games. The game received average reviews, mostly in the 7 range, with praise coming in for the atmosphere and whimsy of the game's narrative, along with a fun gameplay system, and critique coming in for the simple narrative and level design. The game picks up with our main character Perrin being dropped off with her grandfather in Tees Town while her parents go off on an expedition. Unfortunately, the average age of residents of Tees Town is probably in the 50s or 60s, so Perrin is looking at a very boring time with no one to play with. That's when she encounters a monster, a type of creature that only children can see. She quickly connects with the monsters and gets to visit their village. Not long after, though, the monster village is attacked and destroyed by a group called the Phantoms, and Perrin must use the drill she pulled from the stone to fight back against the Phantoms and protect the monsters. She'll travel all over the land, taking on the Phantom Prince and his henchmen, and try to recover the monsters and their lost possessions to restore the monster village. It is a very straightforward plot, and given the length of the game, it's unsurprising that the game doesn't go into significant depth in its world building and character writing. The monsters and their foes, the Phantoms, are the most developed part of the game, with plenty of effort into making them all memorable in their own quirky ways. That did succeed in my book. You can still go back to the human world and talk to humans, and that will be necessary times, but you can really understand why Perrin would prefer to hang out with the monsters instead. On top of that, the humans include Cylinder, who should be avoided at all costs for non-upgrade reasons. Ugh. Progress in the game is done through various levels scattered throughout the region, with each area having a particular theme. You have the ruins, the forest, the mountain, etc. Upon completing a level, you may get a reward of some furniture that can be returned to the corresponding monster, and more levels will reveal themselves. Most levels are very easy to get into, but some require you to do something specific to unlock them. I did find those ones frustrating because they were usually obtusely explained, but eventually I got in since there is a limit to the amount of things you can try. Also, if you feel like paying, you can get hints or sometimes even just pay them to let you in entirely. Once in the levels themselves, there is a lot to do beyond the combat. There are various puzzles, things to destroy to get money, and platforming challenges. Most of it is well thought out, and the few areas of frustration tend to go to the camera for the game and the way the enemy targeting system works. For those just starting out, just know that almost everything is destroyable. If it's out in the level, in all likelihood you can destroy it and reap the rewards for doing so. In fact, the grade for beating a level is based on the enemies you've killed, objects you've destroyed, game overs you've had, and time spent in the level, so thoroughly destroying everything is in fact encouraged. Level variety is more limited than I would like, since some levels end up being mirrored copies from earlier levels in the later sections of the game. The levels aren't bad, but when you've gone through them forward and backwards, it can get a little tedious. If you run out of health in a level, you can keep trying just with half of your previous health, so you better hope you can find one of the healing spots before the end, otherwise you'll have to leave entirely and try again from the start. When it comes to combat, the main thing to remember is patience and rhythm. Perrin wields her drill to take down the various foes she faces. As you can see on the top of the screen, there is a meter going with stars moving along it. Attacking in rhythm to that meter lands you critical hits to take down enemies. This can also be used for platforming with jump attacks that take you from one enemy to another. It takes a little getting used to, but it's fascinating as a system, and I learned that the hardest difficulty mode of the game makes it so you can't do any damage unless it is a critical hit. The range of difficulty modes after beating the game on the preceding difficulty mode is impressive. Those who want more challenges with this game after finishing it before will have plenty of options. Of the enemies you encounter, some of them come equipped with armor to prevent normal attacks from hitting. For those opponents, you will need to charge up the drill to get through. This is also what you need to use to destroy certain objects in the environment. Thankfully, you don't have to charge it to full to do so, but if you do, you can get a greater attack power and even chain together attacks on enemies. As the game progresses, one of the things you can invest your hard-earned money on are special attacks for Perrin. These abilities vary based on the elemental charge you've given to the drill, but they are powerful attacks that can hit all around and for big damage. What abilities you can pull off varies depending on your drill level, which increases with each object or enemy you hit with a critical hit and decreases with every hit Perrin takes. The system can be brutal as well. You're really expected to avoid getting hit as much as possible, which for normal encounters can be done pretty easily, but boss battles where you could really use that extra oomph in your attacks are a lot trickier. That being said, you can charge up your drill with items as well as heal with cake and cookies in the menu at any point in battle. The boss battles were mostly good. They do tend to work mechanically with the level that you have been traversing through prior to the boss battle, and if, for instance, you've been struggling with the timing of jump attacks, that can lead to certain bosses being particularly difficult to beat. That's the best way to make sure you get better though, and I had some incredibly tense moments where I was down to very low health and had to play as flawlessly as I could to pull things out. That was usually down to my bad planning though, and shouldn't be the expectation, but it was certainly memorable. I would point to the combat as a real positive for the game. There are clunky elements to it, as there are for many parts of this game, but the satisfying moments more than made up for them. Now throughout this game, Perrin will wear many hats. Mainly because these hats offer great bonuses, from a hat to protect you from being damaged underwater, to a hat that heals you when you pull off a critical hit. Some of these hats can be procured through buying them, some from finding them in levels, others are secrets that you have to complete a puzzle to find, or you can exchange gold medals with your grandfather to get others. All of them can be upgraded using materials called junk collected from enemies' armor and weapons at a store in the human town. They can be changed at any time during gameplay, and I encourage you to do so liberally as the situation calls for it. Beyond being useful, there are some seriously adorable or cool things to wear. That leads me to the presentation of the game. It feels like they were going for a game with lots of potential mascot characters with the various monsters and with Perrin herself. They have generally memorable designs and bring that wacky sense to the world. Perrin is a well-designed and thought-out character when it comes to how she's presented to the world. I could see a lot of people really gravitating to her. As for the world itself, it's fine. Falcom did run into the age-old Falcom issue of budget issues, which meant they had to do stuff like the mirroring of levels I mentioned earlier to get the amount of levels they wanted for the game. The environments look nice, but feel bare at times. I was pleasantly surprised by how good the animation was for the action of the game, so that's a positive. The game's music is great. Did Mieko Ishikawa and Hayato Sonata need to go that hard with the soundtrack? Of course not, but they did, and we love them for it. Now for voice acting, the game's English cast is used as one of the big selling points in the West, as they got actors like Tara Strong, Dee Bradley Baker, and Steve Blum to voice characters. It shows in a lot of the voice work, which is excellent. Unfortunately, Perrin is not one of them. She's been given a rather monotone voice that feels off with many of the other performances. It's not bad per se, but there could have been so much more, and I think Perrin would have really benefited from someone with a little more energy. As mentioned before, the user experience also leaves plenty to be desired with the camera specifically. The targeting system on enemies can cause the camera to shift as you're jumping or moving around, and I can't count the number of times I fell off because the camera shifted to targeting an enemy while I was jumping, or just before. That number was still far less than just me falling off by my own incompetence, but I don't need any help in that regard, game! The game also doesn't always explain the controls well, especially for PC. For example, the special abilities tell you on mouse and keyboard to spin the mouse to do an ability. They don't actually mean to spin the mouse, they mean to spin the character, with the movement buttons. That sadly isn't the only time the instructions are just flat out wrong. I encourage looking up a guide when starting the game, not necessarily for navigating where to go, but to find better explanations of the game's mechanics and controls. In short, there are some good but not great presentation elements of the game, such as voice acting and art design, some bad elements such as the camera and tutorial explanations, and one unequivocally great part with the music. Gurumin, A Monstrous Adventure was an experiment for Falcom, and for that I respect the effort, and there's still plenty of value here. It has a charming style and a great battle system with excellent music to go with it. In fact, for those who really get into the game, there is so much packed in along with the regular game, from additional levels, specific challenges, and progressively harder difficulties to take on if you want, and this is all available after beating the game itself. For a game that you can get for $9.99 on Steam as a base price, I think that makes Gurumin a solid bargain, and I know diehard Falcom fans will get plenty from it. For the rest of y'all, if, even after all this, you're still interested in playing the game, I say go for it. Gurumin will make you work for it, but there's plenty of fun to be had with the game. That now leaves only one localized Falcom game released on Steam that I have never played, and that is Xanadu Next. I will get around to it at some point and finish off this journey over a decade in the making. If you want to keep up with that endeavor or any other videos I make, please consider subscribing and leaving the video a like for more like it. Comment below your thoughts on Gurumin or Falcom in general, and I will see you next time. Have a great day and happy gaming.